Mr. McGillivray, what do you think Canada should learn from this hurricane?
Well, I think we have our own problems here with wind and water, but particularly water. And I mean, this hurricane right now is really a water event. Is what the issue really is. And we see time and time again that we have our own problems here with water, with overland flooding, whether it's coastal flooding or whether it's heavy rainfall-related flooding, like we had in Toronto twice last month alone. We have riverine flooding in Fredericton this past spring, and in the Okanagan also this past spring. Last year, Ottawa, Gatineau, Montreal. Certainly we can learn a lot by what's happening in the United States, and one of the things I really like to get across is we have to learn to live with water better. So
what should we be doing?
I think there's a couple of things here that, first of all, if any new construction in Canada is occurring on floodplains, it should be halted. We should not be putting any assets whatsoever in floodplains. We're pretty good about that in places like Southern Ontario and other places, but still, in Canada, we have new developments that are often going up in risky places, and that has to end. The other thing we have to look at is when we do have a flood, and I spoke a lot about this last year with the Montreal, Gatineau, Ottawa floods, is that we have to start thinking about perhaps buying out people that are in high-risk areas rather than simply pay to put everything back the way it was and experience a flood again and keep repeating this process over and over again. We have to really seriously think about getting people out of risk, out of harm's way. And I point back to Hurricane Hazel in the Toronto area in 1954, where that happened. Government stepped in and bought out a lot of homeowners that were in high-risk areas, turned the area into parkland, and it was a very successful program. And we saw it again, actually, in the Cape Breton Regional Municipality, where some homes flooded on Thanksgiving 2 years ago. And that municipal government bought out, I think it was 18 high-risk homeowners. So we have to start thinking about this sort of thing, getting people out of harm's way. And finally, I'd like to talk about how we need individual property owners to take responsibility for their properties and do things to try to prevent flooding from affecting their homes.
Such as?
Well, there's a whole range of things that can be done, and we have a lot of material on our website about it. That's ICLR.org. We talk about things like installing backwater valves, and these are devices that prevent sewage from coming back into basements during usually heavy rainfall events. There are a lot of cities in Canada that require backwater valves in new construction. There are also a few cities in Canada that will help you pay for the installation of these devices, like Toronto and Ottawa and Hamilton and London and Edmonton and Calgary, and lots of places will help pay for these things. So backwater valves are really important. A lot of homes in Canada have sump pumps or should have sump pumps, but they don't have backup pumps or backup power supplies to those pumps. And we firmly believe that those should be in place. And not only should they be in place, but they should be embedded in the building code and should be required. We have people that have very poor landscaping around the property and the rain and water pools around the foundation of the home. The water's coming towards the property. It should be going away from the property. So people should learn how to landscape the property so that they get water away from the home. There are a range of other things, a lot of maintenance issues and things of that nature, fixing cracks in foundations and putting covers over your window wells, your basement window wells, and a whole range of things. But it's really, really key that homeowners realize that they have a very important role to play in flood mitigation and that they step up and do what they need to do.
Should the government be doing something about natural features that can mitigate the effects of flooding?
In terms of flood defense, absolutely. I think we're behind in flood defense in Canada. A lot of the flood infrastructure that we have now is quite old, and then a lot of it is non-existent, particularly in older parts of older cities. There's basically no flood defense. I think the government really has to step up, and it's doing so finally. After many years of kind of being out of the business of flood defense, we're seeing the federal government getting back into it through cost-sharing programs with provinces and municipalities and helping smaller local governments pay for flood defense. And so we're starting to see the federal government slowly get back into this business, and it's a good thing.
How would you characterize what we're seeing now in terms of extreme weather?
Well, the feeling is that we're seeing more loss events and bigger loss events, and we have people out there that are attributing it all to climate change, which is not completely accurate. Climate change does play a role in these events, to be sure, but there are other factors that come into play. But what we're seeing right now is what I like to call climate change on training wheels. This is just the beginning of the warming and the impact on severe weather. To use some bad English, we ain't seen nothing yet, and I think in the decades ahead we're going to see categorically more events, bigger events of various kinds. We're going to see more water-related events like heavy rainfall and flooding, coastal flooding, riverine flooding. We may see impacts on wildfire. Certainly the models say that we're going to have probably double the area burn that we're seeing right now. So the future is looking pretty bleak when it comes to climate change and severe weather. It's certainly going to get worse.
Thank you very much for this.
You're welcome.